beautiful people. Welcome to the Dr. Joy Show, your prescription for total wellness. And I am your host, Dr. Joy. We have an interesting guest where she is an MD, psychiatrist. No, she's not going to say that you're crazy. And she weaves in psychiatry with legal matters. That would be the penal system. All right, but before we get started, you know what we do on the Dr. Joy Show? We take 3 deep breaths to get you all ready for the show. You ready? Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Last one. Inhale. Exhale. How do you feel? I know I feel great. I want to welcome Dr. Vivian Chern Shnaidman to the show.
Thank you so much.
And you are the author of Forensic Psychiatry, A Lawyer's Guide.
I am.
Okay. Well, we're going to get to that book. First, congratulations, but we're going to get to that in a second. Could you tell me a little bit about you?
About me?
Yeah,
Wow.
about you.
I am a psychiatrist. I work close by in Skillman, New Jersey.
Okay.
I am a mom. I have 3 kids.
And how did you get into forensic psychiatrist? And what does a forensic psychiatrist do?
So I did a fellowship in forensic psychiatry at NYU after I finished my training in general psychiatry. But I've always been interested in forensic psychiatry. Before I even knew what it was called, I wanted to be the psychiatrist who goes to court and explains to everybody what really happened.
Who hires you?
Lawyers hire me.
Okay, so lawyers, there are 2 sides. From, with the penal system, there's 2 sides, the prosecutor and the people that are defending, right?
Right. Or it could be a civil case.
Oh, okay.
So all different kinds of cases. Anything where there's some kind of judge involved. They might use a forensic psychiatrist.
So what kinds of forensic cases are you involved in?
All kinds. I do a lot of work in the public sector. So I actually have contracts, because the public sector doesn't do anything without bureaucracy.
Right.
So I have contracts in New Jersey with the Division of Child Protection and Permanency, with the Public Defender's Office. I do cases for the Office of Parental Representation, for the Public Defender in criminal cases. I work with a lot of private attorneys in different kind of civil cases. I have contracts with some state agencies to evaluate people, like to see if they're capable of returning to work or if they're not dangerous, all different kinds of cases.
Okay, so this forensic science, it spans across many types of cases.
Yes.
So does treating patients ever help you with the complex forensic cases?
Absolutely.
How?
Well, first of all, when you are evaluating somebody for the court, a lot of times they don't want to tell you anything.
Who doesn't want to tell you?
The person that you're evaluating.
Right, okay.
So because I have a very big treatment practice,
right,
and it wasn't really meant to be that big, but it just grew and grew and grew.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. It helps to be able to establish a rapport with people. So doing psychiatry on a daily basis and having a lot of patients and having people who are willing to tell me their deepest secrets,
right,
helps me to establish a rapport with people who don't really want to talk to me. A lot of times evaluations are court ordered. The judge tells them you have to talk to Dr. Shnaidman, and they might not want to talk to me, but they have to.
So, Dr. Vivian, may I
Yes,
call you?
sure.
How do you get them to talk to you?
I just explain to them that I'm going to be talking to them, and that even though the evaluation is going to be used in court, that I'm going to do my best to tell the truth.
Right.
And I listen to them, and I let them tell me their story. And people like that.
So, have you ever gotten someone off of like life in prison or a death penalty?
Yes.
Can you share?
I don't know about a death penalty because that is really a very rare type of case. But I can tell you about one case that I did a few years ago, right here in New Jersey. It was a kid who did a really crazy crime. He stole a police car. And he stole this police car in the middle of a manic episode. So he was really psychotic. He was delusional.
Was he your patient before?
He was never my patient.
Okay.
You know, part of forensic psychiatry is that it's really the most ethical not to have a doctor-patient relationship. So when you do an evaluation, you're brought in brand new. So this kid, he was in his early 20s, but you know, I call him a kid. So this kid was having this psychotic episode. It had gone on for a few months and was getting worse and worse and worse. And at the culmination of his psychosis, he stole a police car, and he believed he was getting all kinds of messages from the devil, that the world was ending, and that people were enslaved. And he stole this police car, and he drove through 5 towns with it. It was down at the shore. And finally he was stopped, and the police beat him up pretty badly. And they took him to the hospital, and then they took him to jail. And throughout this process, the judge didn't want to permit him to be psychiatrically evaluated.
And why do you think that was?
A lot of people don't understand that psychiatry is a thing, unfortunately. But eventually his lawyer prevailed, and he was also getting psychiatric treatment in the jail. So eventually I was permitted to do an evaluation, and this kid had some treatment, not complete treatment, and he'd also recovered a bit. You know, the episode had begun to resolve a bit. So when I evaluated him, he had documented himself what he had been through.
So that helped you?
That helped me.
So,
but what happened in this case was I wrote my report, but the judge didn't, the judge and the attorney, the prosecutor, refused to allow the attorney who hired me to bring in my report or to bring in my testimony.
And why is that?
I couldn't tell you. They just wouldn't wait. They just persisted in prosecuting this kid, and they found him guilty of all of these things.
And what was his sentence?
Here's what happened. The lawyer who hired me, he sent me an email. They would not wait. I will use your report at sentencing. So I wasn't there. I never got to testify. He brought the report, and the judge read my report and read this detailed description, including all of the signs and symptoms of mania, the history of his disorder, all of the things that I found in the history, the kid's description of what he had been through, and why he had done all the things he did, and how I found that it correlated exactly with his mental illness. And the judge overturned his own conviction.
How often does that happen?
I never heard of it happening.
So
I mean, it must happen, but I personally never heard of it happening.
So what happened? Let's fast forward. What happened to the young man?
He went to a psychiatric hospital.
Okay.
And the last I heard, he was doing well. He was living in some kind of a group home and had a part-time job, and he was trying to finish his education.
Oh, well, that's a good story. Number one, he's doing something productive with his life within being confined, and he's also getting some help.
Yes.
Right? So what kinds of mental illnesses do you treat?
Anything that walks through the door.
Anything that walks through the door? Give me an example.
Schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety.
But how do you, as a psychiatrist, label? Well, I don't want to say label. Well, yeah, I have to say label. That's an easy word. How do you label somebody schizophrenic or bipolar? So they might not even know it.
It's a very good question. So there's something called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM.
Okay.
And because I just wrote this book, I did a little research on the history of the DSM.
Okay.
And it arose from something called the ICD, which is now the ICD-10, they're up to, the International Classification of Diseases, which is used worldwide. It's made by the World Health Organization.
Right.
After World War II, a bunch of people got together and wanted to figure out how to classify the mental disorders that the soldiers were coming home with. And that led to the classification, the first diagnostic and statistical classification of mental disorders.
Right.
So that was the DSM, I guess.
Right.
And now we're up to DSM-5.
Okay.
And what it really is a way of organizing signs and symptoms of mental disorders that frequently occur together.
Right.
They're not diagnosable by lab tests or genetic profiling or x-rays or anything like that. You know, we're not at that point yet with psychiatric disorders. But what we are at the point of is finding clinical presentations that frequently occur together.
But let's take a bunch of people outside, okay? They don't even know. Some of these people might not even know that they have these challenges. How will someone that they're around be able to see or recognize that they may need your help?
Usually, well, there's a few things. There's a few, like, I don't know what they call them, like truisms or
Triggers.
No, like sayings, you know, that we say in psychiatry. Like, for example, there's something called personality disorder. So the idea is that a regular psychiatric disorder will make the person feel bad, but a personality disorder will make everybody else around him feel bad. So that's one way that we tell. But in general, unless somebody is really suffering, they don't go for treatment unless they get in trouble somewhere else, get in trouble with the law, get in trouble at school, get in some kind of trouble where they get referred.
Okay. So that's how they come to you.
So that's how they come to me for forensic evaluations. In my treatment practice, people come to me because they're suffering, usually, from something.
And how do you help them overcome their suffering?
Well, I don't know if I always can help them, but traditionally, psychiatric problems were treated with psychotherapy because there really were no medications. Then in the middle of the last century, psychiatric treatment became more and more medication focused. And around the mid to the late 1980s, serotonin agonists were invented. And then the new antipsychotic medications were invented in the early 1990s. And that created a real shift in psychiatric treatment out of the mental hospitals and into the community.
So what medications do you prescribe? So if I were to give you a scenario, person comes in, they've been referred. So they have a history. You would classify them or diagnose them. You would do an assessment.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming
yes.
assessment has got to be key,
it's the
right,
most
Dr.
important
Vivian?
Thing.
Okay, so you do your assessment and you classify them, and then you figure out yourself if you can help them, right?
Right.
And once you say, okay, yes, I can help this person get to a better place, do you always prescribe medications?
It depends.
Okay.
It really depends. Like, it depends how severe their symptoms are. It depends on the patient, him or herself, what they're looking for, on how open-minded they are, on what they're willing to do. Some patients, a lot of patients come and they say, I feel very anxious and I can't sleep.
Okay.
If I think that those are their only problems, if I say they have a mild anxiety disorder and they have insomnia, I would prefer not to give them medication.
So would you use a holistic approach?
Yes.
Okay.
And I want them to use, good sleep hygiene. I want them to exercise. I want them to change their diet. I want them to avoid caffeine. Some patients find those interventions intolerable. Some patients really want a pill.
Yeah.
We were talking
because they think that they take the pill, it's going to fix it.
Right.
Okay.
And, the joke is, in my office, is I'm not aware of a pill for that, because
right.
people have a lot of problems for which there is no such thing as a pill. I try to talk to my patients, even though, unfortunately, health insurance doesn't pay enough to give people good psychotherapy, really any psychotherapy. But I try to cram as much as I can into those 15 minutes a month, to give them some kind of support.
Wait. You said 15 minutes?
That's basically what insurance covers.
And what do you recommend for,
I-
for psychotherapy?
I would give them an hour a day if I could.
Right.
That would really help.
And psychotherapy sans prescriptions, which would be a totally holistic approach.
Or even with prescriptions.
Okay.
But you want to we have some very good medications available, but you want to use them very judiciously.
Yeah.
You don't want to just pile medication on top of
Right.
medication.
Right. Yeah, because our goal is to, yes, we want to help them, your client, right? But we don't want them to be dependent on the medication, because those medications have what I would call poisoning effects or side effects.
You want to avoid the side effects. You want to use just the amount of medication that's going to work.
Okay.
You know, I've heard some people say, well, it's just milligrams. They're so tiny. Well, no, because, you don't know exactly where they're going to work.
Exactly.
So you want to get just the amount that's going to work for you.
So what do you prescribe?
Depends for what.
Well, give me an example, Dr. Vivian.
So for depression,
Yes.
right, which is depression and anxiety.
Right.
I have a couple of antidepressants that I find to be the tried and true, right? I really rely on Zoloft, sertraline.
Okay.
I find it to be the safest. It works the longest over a longest period of time with the fewest side effects. It works in very low doses. I've had women come through pregnancies on it. They can breastfeed on it. Doesn't get into the breast milk. It's very safe.
Whoa. Did you just say that you've seen pregnant women take Zoloft throughout their pregnancy while they were breastfeeding, so they delivered the baby, while they were breastfeeding, and notice no side effects to themselves nor the fetus?
Yep.
Really?
Yes, that's why it's so safe. And there's data.
Okay, so you have the studies to back it up. What's your second favorite?
For an antidepressant, it's actually a new antidepressant called Brintellix.
Okay. And these are all prescription.
These are all prescriptions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they would have to see someone like you to get that.
Yeah.
Okay, so schizophrenia, bipolar.
So for bipolar disorder, the gold standard is lithium. Lithium is a very good medication, but it has to be monitored very closely. And it can have long-term effects on the thyroid and on the kidneys.
Right.
So I actually prefer to use anticonvulsants, which also have side effects. You just have to be very careful. I mean, you really have to be careful.
So, what I would love to see is that, yes, we know that mental health is huge. I mean, people are committing suicide, depression rate is up high, and then we have these other diseases, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, etc. It would be nice, and maybe you can charge this, where they can get the help they need without really focusing and using the crutch of a pharmaceutical.
Well, I hear you and I understand your position. I think, though, that we have to consider the fact that some people, unfortunately, the way that we have manipulated our environment, we now need to use medications for some people.
Okay.
That perhaps if we didn't have all this technology bombarding us, perhaps if we didn't have all these chemicals in our environment, perhaps if we didn't have these lights, and if we didn't live on this schedule where we wake up in the dark and we go to sleep in the dark and everything is artificial, then maybe our brains would also be more natural. But I think that because we've manipulated our environment so drastically, our brains can't keep up. And so we have to manipulate our brains a little bit for some people.
So let's talk about brain-body connection. What do you say to that? Because you said the brain, the brain is in our body. And,
yes.
And some of us need that pill to get us more centered, right? So how does that work?
This is also very interesting. When I was writing this book, I learned that, how we have the fight or flight response?
Yes.
I learned that initially we thought that that being physically sick made people depressed. People would be living with a chronic illness.
Right.
And that chronic illness would affect our brains so that we would become depressed and anxious from living with a chronic illness.
Okay.
But now there's new data mainly out of Scandinavia, where they have a lot of money for research.
Yeah.
They found that this fight or flight response, it's only meant to be on very quickly, right? And what happens is you get a stressor,
Right.
and you have this release of catecholamines, all these brain neurochemicals. They're released into your brain and they seep into your bloodstream. Unfortunately, our brains don't know the difference between like a cave lion at the door and a mean girl.
Well, it's just something that we need to avoid. That's probably what
Right.
the brain
But-
is saying.
but
Go
our-
in the opposite direction.
But yet that fight or flight response now is triggered constantly. And those catecholamines are released constantly. And our physiology is not prepared for that.
Okay.
So those catecholamines are released into our brain, and then they're released into our whole body. And they are in our bodies, and they are creating toxicity to our bodies and
That's true.
making us sick
Yes.
in a way that has never happened before in human history in a million years.
So how can we mitigate that?
I don't know.
Homework
That's
assignment
something
for
that
you.
that you know.
No, because I see it as well. Let me ask you this question: the mental health diseases, schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, are they hereditary? Do you find that they're hereditary, or do they just come on?
So here's an interesting thing. Schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and certain variants of
Right.
them, right? Like certain kinds of psychotic disorders, certain like hoarding, for example, certain types of OCD. There's a lot of evidence that these are genetically inherited disorders that are not caused by, they can be exacerbated by stress, they can be exacerbated by the environment, autism.
Yes.
These are things that are inherited in ways that are not fully understood, but there definitely is a very big genetic component.
Okay.
You know, like the color of your eyes. But depression,
Right.
anxiety, these are things that are very likely acquired, or at least to some extent acquired, to a big extent acquired. And these things can probably be mitigated by some kind of change in our environment and our lifestyle.
Yeah, and not just on one thing. Change it from physical wellness, mental wellness. Well, that's going to take care of it. Your nutrition, what you eat, your environment, like you said, right? Socially,
Right.
maybe finance might help out, and spiritual.
And you know, there's evidence that stress affects our genes. They've done experiments, whoever they are, scientists,
Scientists, yeah.
have done experiments that show that different kinds of stress actually changes our genetic makeup, and that there's pieces of our chromosomes that get eroded away when we're under certain kinds of emotional and physical stress. And those pieces of our chromosomes are thought to work in protecting the part of our chromosomes that actually do something. So these scientists, have
right.
found identical twins with DNA that has ended up different depending on the kind of lives that they lead. So the connection between our mind and our body is literally at the level of our DNA, and stress affects us at the level of our DNA.
Dr. Vivian, your top 5, I said 4, but 5, because we have a couple of minutes, 5 tips, your top 5 tips on how to mitigate, reduce stress.
Oh my God, I feel like you're asking the wrong person. But
Well,
I
no,
will
'cause
tell you.
everybody has.
Everybody has.
Because we're talking about the mind-body connection, and we're talking about some of these mental health disorders that occur. Some of them are exacerbated by stress.
I think
so we could fix the
that-
stress.
At least one really important thing is to surround yourself with people who care about you and have your back.
Yes. Nurturing people.
Nurturing people, because people are really important. Number 2 is stay away from anything that isn't around the edges of the supermarket. Like, don't put anything in your body
That
has
around the edges
yeah,
of the
like
supermarket. Explain that
only
one.
the fresh, unprocessed stuff.
Oh, okay.
Nothing that comes in a box with a ton of labels on it.
Right.
If you have to start deciphering the ingredients,
Yeah.
don't put it in
And the
your
ingredients
body.
are this long and you
Right.
can't pronounce it. Right. I got it.
Okay, so I think that's really important. Obviously, if it's illegal, you shouldn't.
Are you making reference to? Are you making reference to extracurricular types?
Yes.
Of okay, so drugs.
Right. I mean,
Okay.
don't do drugs. Cigarettes are legal, but you shouldn't be smoking them.
Right.
You know, things that you know that are bad for you, and people talk about them being bad for
Right.
you, and you say, "Oh my God, this is so bad for me. I shouldn't."
But
Don't.
okay. All
Right?
right.
It should be obvious.
Right.
I think you have to get outside every day.
Sunlight.
Sunlight. You know, use your sunscreen. Of course, you don't want wrinkles and you don't want skin cancer.
Right.
But sunlight. People. A lot of my patients take melatonin
Right.
to fall asleep. Well, melatonin is what your body produces to fall asleep. If you get outside every day and let the sun shine in your eyes, and you can wear sunglasses,
Of course.
that will start the melatonin cycle and you'll be able to fall asleep. Get outside, go for a walk. We have beautiful places to walk around here. You'd be amazed how many of my patients are like, "Oh no, I can't do that." Really?
So, but that now, when you say go outside, and I know you're at the third one now, the third or
that's my
fourth one,
fourth,
your fourth
right?
one, but that's also going to impact their social component, because if they get outside, maybe they'll interact with other positive people, and then
Right. Well, I think that it's personal. Like some people like to go for a walk by themselves. Some people like to go with somebody else, with
Right.
a friend. If it feels unpleasant, don't do it.
that's right.
If it feels like a competition that your friend is going to be walking faster than you, maybe she's not your friend.
Well, maybe she's just you're
Right?
Yeah. Well, we don't have to say that she's not the friend, but she's just doing her own thing.
Right.
So you have to.
But you have to find what
figure it
works
out.
for you, but find a way to make it work for you
Exactly.
outside.
Outside. But how can people find you, and where can we get your book?
You can get my book wherever books are sold. It's mostly online because it's not, it's not the kind of book people would pick up in
Right.
the airport, I guess. It's called Forensic Psychiatry, A Lawyer's Guide. It's published by Academic Press, which is a subsidiary of Elsevier, which is actually the largest scientific publisher in the world,
Oh,
which
wow.
amazed me.
Okay.
But it is.
Good.
So you can get it at Amazon or any of the online retailers. My office is in Skillman, New Jersey, and my website.
Yeah, what's your website?
It's jerseyforensicconsulting.com. You can also find me at schneidman.com.
Okay.
And
Well,
That's it.
I want to invite you back. So thank you for being a guest on the Dr. Joy Show.
thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and we got on. We talked about a lot of things. And the next time I want to have you on, I want to really dive deep into some of the cases that you've worked on and how you get pulled into the system. Some of the things that you've seen. Some of the things that you may want to correct. That's what
Okay.
we're going to talk about.
That would be awesome.
So thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
Until next time, be blessed, stay healthy. See ya.